I remember the day I married Sophie like it was yesterday. The soft music playing in the background, the smiles, the laughter, and the promises we made to each other. As I stood at the altar looking into her eyes, it felt like the world had just shifted into place. She was everything to me, beautiful, smart, and, most importantly, my best friend. I couldn't imagine life without her. We exchanged vows in front of our closest friends and family. It felt like a fairy tale. I had the perfect job, the perfect house, and now the perfect woman. Sophie was the love of my life, or so I thought. I thought I had everything. The perfect job, the perfect house, and the perfect woman. Sophie was the love of my life, or so I thought. Cut to me sitting alone in a dimly lit room. The picture of Sophie I'm holding feels cold, distant in my hands. I study her face, but there's no warmth left in it, no tenderness. I don't recognize her anymore, not the way I once did. And I can't seem to find the answers I need. I lean back in my chair, running my hand through my hair, staring at the picture. How did I end up here? I suppose I should introduce myself. My name is Alex. I'm 29 years old, and I've lived in the quiet suburbs of Austin, Texas, most of my life. You might say I've had a fairly normal upbringing. Nothing too spectacular, but nothing tragic either. I grew up with both parents, went to college, worked hard to build a career. And then I found Sophie. She was the kind of woman who made everything seem brighter. She made me believe in fate, in destiny. I thought we were meant to be. But now I'm not so sure. Before I proceed, kindly subscribe and comment where you're watching from. I've always been someone who prided myself on knowing where I was headed. Everything I did, every decision I made had a purpose. I was going to be successful, happy, and, most importantly, I was going to build a life with Sophie. But now, as I sit here alone in the dark, the echoes of what was once a beautiful life feel hollow. How could everything I thought I knew crumble so quickly? How could she betray me in the way she did? The questions keep swirling, and all I can do is sit here and try to piece together the shattered parts of my reality. Feels like a lifetime ago, but Sophie and I met in high school. We were two awkward teenagers thrown together by fate, or maybe by a teacher's seating arrangement, but when I saw her for the first time, something inside me just clicked. She had this laugh, the kind that made you want to be around her all the time. It was contagious, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Sophie was never like the other girls. She was confident in a quiet way, always the kind of person who made you feel like you were the only one in the room. And somehow we just fit. We found comfort in each other during the confusing chaos of growing up. We weren't perfect, far from it. There were the usual high school dramas, moments of uncertainty, and the fights that come with learning how to love someone. But we always worked through it. Sophie taught me how to listen, how to understand, and I showed her how to open up when the world felt too heavy. We got through everything together. So, when we graduated, it was clear, nothing would stand between us. Our future was ours to build. We moved in together after college. It felt natural, like the next step in the plan we'd been writing for ourselves since we were kids. Sophie and I spent our weekends traveling, short trips to the coast, road trips through Texas. Each adventure felt like it was adding another layer to the life we'd always dreamed of. Every day with Sophie was like adding another chapter to our love story. Our home was full of laughter, late-night talks about the future, and the occasional Sunday afternoon spent curled up on the couch, just enjoying the silence together. We planned our wedding for almost a year. Every detail was perfect. And that day, when we stood in front of everyone, exchanging vows, I felt like we were untouchable. Like nothing could break what we had built. Sophie, she was the one, the woman I would spend forever with. I repeated it to myself, a mantra I held on to as we shared our first dance as husband and wife. She was my forever. Sophie had a way of making everything feel like it would work out. Her charm, her beauty, it was all so effortless. She was the perfect partner, the kind of woman you tell your friends about, the kind you want to show off. She made me feel like the best version of myself. Every compliment she gave me, every smile, every little gesture, it made me feel seen, like I was exactly who I was supposed to be when I was with her. There was no question in my mind that she loved me as much as I loved her. I couldn't have asked for anything more. There was a moment, though, one that I can't shake, one that makes me question everything. Sophie's beauty and her emotional support weren't just the qualities I admired. They were the glue that kept everything in place, the foundation of our perfect life. Or so I thought. The first crack in the facade came when I noticed Sophie acting a little differently. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but I couldn't help but feel something was off. I walked into the living room one afternoon, and there she was, standing in the kitchen with her phone pressed to her ear. She didn't see me at first, so I just stood there for a moment, listening. Her voice was softer than usual, distant almost. Then I saw it, the way her eyes flicked nervously to the side like she was trying to hide something. She turned away quickly when she noticed me, the phone call abruptly ending. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice light but my stomach twisting. "Yeah, just work stuff," she replied, a smile quickly plastered on her face. But I wasn't convinced. I didn't know it at the time, but that moment, that small interaction, was the first hint that Sophie wasn't the person I thought she was. And I didn't notice. I didn't want to. I trusted her too much to even consider it. But now I wonder if I had seen it then, would things have turned out differently? At first, I brushed it off as nothing. Life gets busy, right? But slowly, Sophie started changing. It wasn't anything huge, not at first, just little things that didn't quite add up. She became more distant, more preoccupied with work and her social life. I didn't mind at first. I figured she was just caught up in the rush of our new life. But then it started happening more often. We used to spend every evening together talking about our day, our future. But now she was always on her phone, always distracted. It felt like she was slipping away and I couldn't quite reach her anymore. The first time I really noticed it was one night just after dinner. We were sitting at the table, eating in near silence, something that had never happened before. Sophie had her phone out, her face lit by the screen, fingers rapidly texting. I tried to engage her in conversation, asking about her day, but she barely looked up, her responses quick and curt. She didn't even finish her meal. It was like I wasn't even there. I let it slide, told myself I was overthinking it. After all, she had her own life, right? Maybe it wasn't all about me. But the distance kept growing. Sophie seemed always preoccupied, her attention elsewhere. She stopped sharing as much with me and I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. The cracks in my trust were starting to show, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. One night I couldn't sleep. The house was silent, the kind of silence that felt heavy, like it was suffocating me. I got up, deciding to check on Sophie to make sure she was okay. She was sitting on the couch, her back to me, scrolling through her phone. I didn't mean to snoop, but some nagging feeling, made me glance at the screen. The messages were short, cryptic, and it made my heart race. There it was, in plain sight, Liam. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The messages were vague, but one stuck with me. "I miss you. I can't wait to see you again." My mind was racing. Who was Liam? Why hadn't she mentioned him? The name felt like a bomb ticking in my head, ready to explode. I wanted to ask her about it, confront her right then and there, but I didn't. Part of me didn't want to know the truth, and the other part of me was terrified of what it might mean. I closed my eyes, shaking my head, trying to brush it off. "It's nothing. You're overreacting, Alex. It's just a friend, maybe." But the doubt began to eat away at me. What if I was wrong? What if she was hiding something? The days that followed felt like I was walking on a tightrope, my every step uncertain. Sophie still came home late from work, still buried herself in her phone, still kept her distance. We ate together, but the silence between us grew. It was like I was living with a ghost of the woman I once knew. My heart sank every time I looked at her, searching for the woman I loved, but all I found was a stranger who didn't care. The anxiety became unbearable. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what was really going on. The self-doubt began to gnaw at me. What if she's cheating? What if she's already moved on? What if I'm the last to know? I started second-guessing everything. Every smile, every laugh, every kiss felt rehearsed, like a performance I wasn't invited to. Our connection, the one I'd thought was unbreakable, now felt fragile, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to shatter. Dinner was tense. Conversations were forced. Every glance at her phone felt like a reminder of something I wasn't supposed to see. I'd sit across from her, pretending everything was fine, but inside, my mind was spiraling. Every night I lay awake, my heart pounding with unanswered questions. What if she's hiding something? The question echoed in my mind louder each time. It wasn't just the phone or the messages. It was everything. Her laughter, once so warm, now felt hollow. The way she looked at me, once filled with love, now seemed distant. She wasn't the Sophie I married. She wasn't even the Sophie I knew. And I was losing her. It happened on a Tuesday, a day like any other. Sophie left her phone on the kitchen counter as she rushed out for another meeting. I had no intention of going through her things, but the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach wouldn't go away. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch. For the past week, something had felt off, and every time I tried to shake it, it crept back up, stronger and more insistent. I stood there in the kitchen looking at her phone. My hands trembled as I reached for it, a voice inside me telling me not to do it, while another screamed at me to find the truth. I told myself I was just being paranoid. But as I unlocked the phone, I felt a sense of dread wash over me, a foreboding that whatever I found would change everything. I hesitated, staring at the home screen for a few seconds. Then, with a deep breath, I opened her messages. And that's when it hit me, the moment everything shifted. The first message I saw was from Liam. My heart skipped a beat. My worst fear was starting to unfold before my eyes. There was no denying it now. I miss you. Can't wait to be together again. I froze, my eyes burning as I read the words over and over again, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Pictures followed, photos of Sophie and Liam together, in places she told me she was working late, or with friends. Their smiles, their closeness, it all felt like a punch to my gut. And then the dates. I checked the calendar on her phone. Every single time Sophie had been absent, there was a matching message, a meeting, a rendezvous. The realization hit me like a freight train. She had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. I felt sick, betrayed. But it wasn't just the affair that shattered me, it was the fact that it was with Liam. Liam, who I thought was just some distant friend, someone I barely knew. Sophie had been carrying on this secret life with him, and I hadn't seen it. I couldn't believe I hadn't seen it. I sat there, the phone in my hands, my mind reeling. The pain hit me in waves, each one crashing harder than the last. I was suffocating, unable to breathe, unable to think clearly. How could she do this to me? How could she betray me so completely? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone across the room and shatter everything in my path. But instead, I just sat there, frozen, feeling every ounce of trust one had in Sophie crumble into dust. I had loved her with everything I had. And now, all I could feel was the sting of her deception. The disbelief was overwhelming. For the first time in our relationship, I didn't recognize the person I was looking at. I had been living a lie, and all this time, Sophie had been living a life that didn't include me. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I thought I married, was gone. In her place was a stranger who had been playing me for a fool. I waited. The truth clawed at me, and I couldn't wait any longer. Sophie came home late that evening as usual. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this fog of uncertainty. I confronted her in the living room, holding the phone in my hands, the proof staring back at us. "Sophie," I said, my voice trembling, "who's Liam?" She froze, her face paling. Her eyes darted around the room, unable to meet mine. She tried to reach for the phone, but I pulled it away. The air in the room thickened with tension. "Alex, please," she began, but I cut her off. "Tell me the truth. Now." Sophie's face crumpled. She sank into the chair, her hands shaking. She couldn't look at me. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered, her voice cracking. I just didn't know how to tell you." My heart pounded in my chest as I listened to her words, each one like a dagger in my side. "I was never truly in love with you," she admitted, her voice so small, so broken. "I thought I was. But the truth is, I married you for comfort. For security. You were everything I needed at the time, Alex. You were perfect on paper. But my heart was always with him." She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with regret, but it was too late. The damage had been done. "I've been living a lie for years," she said, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. "I never told you because I didn't know how to face you with the truth. I thought if I kept pretending, if I kept up the act, maybe I could find a way to love you. But I couldn't. And I'm so sorry. Her confession was like a slap to the face. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. It was all too much. The woman I had given everything to had never truly loved me. All the years we spent together, all the dreams we shared, it had all been a lie. I stood there in silence, numb. Sophie's tears fell freely, but they didn't reach me. I had nothing left for her. Not anymore. The audience is left stunned, as the full weight of Sophie's betrayal becomes clear. Sophie's confession wasn't just about an affair, it was about a love that was never real, a life that was never truly shared. The air between us was thick with tension as Sophie's confession hung in the room like a lead weight. I couldn't move, couldn't think. Everything I had believed in, everything I had trusted, was unraveling before my eyes. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought would stand by my side for the rest of my life, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. My mind couldn't make sense of it. I wanted to scream, to hit something, to lash out at her. But all I could feel was the raw, gut-wrenching pain of realization. How could you do this to me? My voice cracked, breaking in the middle of the sentence as I shouted at her. How could you do this to us? Sophie flinched, her tears falling freely now. But I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. I had given her everything, my heart, my trust, my future. And she had taken it all, only to hand it to someone else, someone who wasn't even in the picture when we first met. The betrayal hit me in waves, each one stronger than the last, drowning me in a sea of disbelief and anger. How could I not see this coming? I whispered to myself, pacing back and forth in the living room, trying to make sense of the wreckage that was my life. I couldn't stop the questions from pouring in. How had I been so blind? How could she have pretended for so long? I had been living in a fantasy, a lie that Sophie had built, brick by brick. And now it was all falling apart and there was nothing I could do to stop it. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe, couldn't escape the suffocating weight of her betrayal. I didn't know who to be angry at, her or myself for trusting her so completely. My mind was racing, full of thoughts I couldn't control, feelings I couldn't contain. I was furious, devastated, and yet I still loved her. How was that even possible? How could I still love someone who had torn me apart like this? The days after that confrontation were a blur. I spent most of my time in isolation, not knowing how to face the world. Sophie tried to reach out, to apologize, but I couldn't bring myself to look at her without feeling like I was suffocating. The memories of us, the vacations, the laughter, the quiet mornings, were now tainted by the knowledge that it had all been a lie. My mind played scenes of our life together on a loop, each one more painful than the last. I went over every conversation, every gesture, every glance, trying to find the signs I had missed. Had she always been lying? When did it start? I felt like a fool. A damn fool. How could I have not seen it? How could I have trusted her so completely, knowing now that she was hiding this whole other life from me? I began to question everything about our relationship. Was anything real? Was it all just part of her performance? The self-loathing crept in, gnawing at me with each passing day. How could I have been so blind? I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. My mind was a constant storm, spinning in circles, crashing into walls of doubt and rage. The anger I had felt in the moment of the confrontation was now a low, simmering burn, an ache that settled deep in my chest. And underneath it all, there was the sharp sting of humiliation. Sophie had humiliated me in the worst way, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had failed somehow, that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't worthy of her love. I could barely look at myself in the mirror without feeling like a failure. After a week of silence, Sophie came to me. She begged for forgiveness. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the guilt that was now eating away at her. She told me she wanted to make things right, that she was willing to do anything to fix what she had broken. She kept saying she was sorry, her voice shaking as she asked me for another chance. I never meant to hurt you, Alex, she said, her words thick with regret. Please, I want to fix this. I love you. I want to love you. Her words were empty to me now. They felt like a broken record, rehearsed, as though she had said them so many times before. I stared at her, numb, my heart still bleeding but struggling to beat through the pain. Could I forgive her? Should I forgive her? The thought of rebuilding what we had seemed impossible. The trust that had been the foundation of our relationship had been shattered beyond repair. How could I ever trust her again? I stood there, frozen, trying to make sense of everything. Sophie was crying, pleading with me, but I didn't know if I was capable of forgiving her. Could I look at her again without seeing Liam in the background of every memory? Could I pretend that everything we had wasn't tainted, that I wasn't just another man she had deceived? I don't know if I can do this, I said quietly, the words feeling like they came from someone else, someone unrecognizable. Sophie's face crumpled and she collapsed to the floor in front of me, her hands gripping my legs. Please, Alex. I'm sorry. I need you. I love you. But I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything anymore, except the weight of the truth pressing down on me. The truth that no matter how much she begged, no matter how many tears she shed, something was broken beyond repair. And deep down I knew it, the love we had was gone. The audience is left on the edge of their seats, feeling the raw tension of Alex's inner conflict. Will he choose to rebuild, or will he walk away from the only person he thought he could trust? I was finally starting to breathe again, or at least I thought I was. The days had been heavy, but slowly I'd begun to rebuild the pieces of my life that Sophie had shattered. I told myself I was done with her, that I could move on. But then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I figured it was just the delivery guy or maybe a neighbor needing something. But when I opened the door, my stomach dropped. Liam. Standing on my doorstep, looking as calm as if he'd been invited. I didn't even try to hide my shock or anger. What the hell are you doing here? I snapped, my voice sharp, tight with disbelief. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't place. Regret? Defiance? I couldn't be sure. What I was sure of was that I didn't want him here. I didn't want to see him standing there, the man who had been part of the destruction of everything I thought was real. I came to talk, Liam said, his voice low, almost too calm for the situation. I didn't let him continue. Talk? After everything you've done? You think we have anything to talk about? Liam nodded, unfazed. Yes, we do. It's time you know the whole story. Sophie, who had been standing behind him, trying to stay out of the way, finally stepped forward. She looked terrified but also resigned. She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't let her. Not now, Sophie, I said, my voice low, cold. But Liam wasn't backing down. You deserve to know the truth, he said, stepping inside without waiting for permission. Sophie and I, this thing between us, it's been going on for years. You were never the one, Alex. Not for her. She never loved you the way you thought she did. She was with you for the security, for the life you could give her. But her heart has always been with me. Every word he spoke felt like a punch to my chest. My breath caught and I stumbled backward, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I don't believe you, I spat, but my voice wavered. The doubt was creeping back in again, gnawing at the walls I'd tried so hard to build. Liam's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something I hadn't expected, guilt. But it was fleeting. He shook his head, his expression hardening. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but she's been living a double life for as long as I've known her. She was never yours, Alex. Sophie was crying now, her shoulders shaking, but she stayed silent. I could see the tear stains on her cheeks, but I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. Shock didn't even begin to cover it. My mind was spinning. It felt like everything I knew, everything I believed, was just a lie. I didn't know who I was anymore or who she had been. The anger rose in me again, hot and searing, but this time it wasn't just rage. It was something else, something deeper. I realized something in that moment, something I hadn't fully understood until now. Sophie wasn't the woman I thought she was, and I wasn't the man who would keep fighting for someone who never truly fought for me. The silence in the room was deafening as I turned to Sophie. You don't get to play both sides. You've made your choice, Sophie. I didn't know where the strength came from, but I felt it surge through me, a clarity I hadn't had before. If your heart is with him, then go. Be with him. Sophie opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. No. I'm done. I deserve someone who chooses me, not someone who lies to me. The weight of the decision felt heavy, but it was also freeing. The moment I said it out loud, I felt a small part of the burden lift. I wasn't doing this out of spite, I wasn't doing it to hurt her. I was doing it because I knew I deserved better. And more importantly, I was doing it for myself. Sophie's face crumpled, her hands shaking as she took a step toward me. "Alex, please, don't leave me," she whispered, her voice breaking. But I didn't move. I didn't even flinch. "I'm not leaving you, Sophie. I'm leaving the lie," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You made your choice a long time ago. And so did I." For a long time we just stood there, the silence suffocating. Sophie was crying in front of me, but I wasn't going to run to her this time. Not anymore. I turned away, the sound of Sophie's sobs fading behind me as I walked down the hall, out of the room. Liam was still there, standing in the doorway, but I didn't acknowledge him. He wasn't my concern anymore. He wasn't even part of my world. I was done. And as I walked into the quiet of my bedroom, I felt the last vestiges of my old life crumble behind me. But I also felt something else, something I hadn't felt in weeks: peace. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was free. The decision was hard, but it was the right one. As I closed the door behind me, I realized I had just taken the first step toward something new, something better. And no matter what happened next, I was going to be okay. Several months had passed since the day I walked away from Sophie. Time had a funny way of working its magic. At first, it felt like I was suffocating, unable to breathe, trapped in a life that no longer made sense. But slowly things started to shift. I started to find myself again. I found solace in the simplest things: a morning coffee, the feeling of the sun on my face as I walked through the park. I started taking care of myself, mentally and physically, something I'd neglected for so long while I was wrapped up in the chaos of my relationship with Sophie. I got back to doing the things I loved, things that had been buried beneath the weight of my own heartbreak. I rediscovered my love for photography, something I had put on the back burner. I'd always wanted to travel, to explore, to capture the beauty of the world through my lens. And slowly I started doing it. I even started dating again, something I never thought would happen. The first few dates were awkward. Hell, they were downright painful. But with each one, I grew a little more comfortable with the idea of moving on. I was learning not to fear the future, not to dwell on what I had lost. I realized that I had so much more to offer than I had ever given myself credit for. But the most important thing I found was peace. A kind of peace that came from letting go of the past, from accepting that some things were never meant to be. The pain of Sophie's betrayal no longer consumed me. It was still there, buried deep, but it didn't define me anymore. I was stronger now. And for the first time in a long time, I could look at myself in the mirror and see someone worthy of love, someone capable of happiness. I sat in my favorite park one afternoon, the autumn leaves drifting gently in the breeze. It had become a quiet retreat for me, a place to think, to reflect. I wasn't in a rush anymore. There was no longer a constant ticking clock in the back of my mind. I watched the world go by, the families, the couples, the joggers. I felt the weight of the past lifting little by little. Sometimes, I whispered to myself, you need to lose everything to find yourself. It wasn't some grand epiphany. It wasn't a perfect moment of clarity. It was simply the truth I'd come to understand. Life wasn't always going to be fair. People would let you down. But that didn't mean it was the end. It could be a new beginning. And that's what I was living now, my new beginning. I was no longer defined by Sophie's betrayal or by the life I had imagined for us. I was defined by the strength I had to find within myself. And that strength made me feel unstoppable. Just as I was starting to feel like I was finally on solid ground, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't even need to look at the screen to know who it was. Sophie. She had tried to contact me a few times over the past few months, but I had ignored her messages. I thought I had moved on, that I was past it. But the phone call this time felt different, like a final attempt, a last plea for forgiveness. I stared at the screen for a moment, the weight of her name pulling at something deep inside me. I knew what she was going to say. She was sorry for everything, for the pain she had caused. She wanted me to forgive her. But I also knew that the damage was done. And no matter how many apologies she sent, the past couldn't be undone. I looked at the phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was just indifferent. Sophie's call wasn't going to change anything. It wasn't going to bring back what we had. It wasn't going to give me the closure I needed. So I let it ring. The screen flickered as the call ended, and I tossed my phone onto the grass beside me. The faint buzz of a text notification came through, but I ignored it, focusing instead on the sound of the wind rustling the leaves around me. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and let the moment wash over me.